new flower bed. And this is the tomato that snapped right after I planted it. I potted it and then it took off, and just planted it this last week again. So we'll see how it does. One potato plant. These sunflowers I transplanted from out front. Just got them planted this last week. And these little tomatoes down here, just for the fun of it, I'll just let them go without stakes or anything back here. But these were started from the sucker starts that I had snapped off of the parent plants. So they're doing good. May not produce due to time, but kind of cool. It's my asparagus. And a couple of artichokes. These little guys I started from seed in early June. May not get anything from them, we'll see. But again, kind of cool to see what had happened self-seeding, or starting by seed outside here. This is winter squash and more peppers. This little area was actually where some squash didn't do so good. I suspect this soil may be contaminated actually. It's new soil this year. These winter squash are doing awesome. They're fairly loaded. This is what the squash looks like. I believe this is the Japanese squash that I planted in my cold frame with the kale and onions and lettuce and carrots. Or Swiss chard, sorry. And these are the kale. Have some babies, winter stone snapdragons in, or yeah, it's in there. Hopefully they'll last the heat and get it going. And then my peppermint and mint and peppermint. These two snapdragons were dug up from being self-sowed in the front of my house. And they're just now really starting to take off, it looks like. They've got some growth going on in the bottom. And then this poppy is actually winter sown. And these are cherry tomatoes. And there's some onions planted in front that I winter sowed. So there's the onions. more peppers. Those are banana peppers. Got some pretty nice ones going there. Some basil. And the black-eyed Susan that I dug up and transplanted. I almost lost it, but looks like it'll make it. It's catmint and agasachi. And this one actually makes some really, really good tea. And bee balm. Some poppies in front and a agasachi. That agasachi actually self-sows quite readily. Coreopsis with some chives behind it. And then these here, the ones in back, I bought. But the ones in front actually self-seeded. Everything here is self-seeded. And it's just starting to bloom. More of that agasachi. Here's pretty cool. I've got a little container back here. It's just a plant saucer filled with rocks. And the insects actually use it. The insects and birds seem to really like this one. I saw a bee in it the other day drinking. Super cheap way to give them their water. And that big one they just seem to ignore. And salvia, again, that self-sowed with salvia, annual salvia. This is perennial salvia. And it looks like this one here is actually blooming. But those three self-sowed from these two plants. And there's another annual salvia. Daisy that I planted this year, and then some lavender. Sweet William, the two that aren't blooming, two small ones that aren't blooming, self-sowed from last year. Some pinastome, those are I planted, but it's too close, and this is another agasachi, the orange one. And it actually self-sowed a couple of plants. And there, see if I can do it. See it? There's a small one. They're really tiny. Of course, some hens and chicks. And the pinastome that came back from last year. And my yarrow, and there's some Russian sage behind it that's just getting ready to bloom. I have a couple of teeny tiny yarrow planted down there that was winter sowing, hoping they make it through this heat. That's a gooseberry bush, and then I've got a tiny one that I bought this year to hopefully help it pollinate. Some rosemary back there. And this onion came from somewhere. I really have no clue. It self-sowed from somewhere. And this is kind of cool. All of those Eaton bachelor buttons, the golden finches love them. Oh. See if I can get this. This is actually, there is an insect in there drinking. This is kale, and this lettuce back here is actually heat tolerant lettuce according to Territorial seeds, so hopefully it does well. And then I've got sunflowers, and I've planted some wildflowers as well amongst the sunflowers. So these peas are going to leave this week. They're getting pretty well done. And then I'm going to try and plant some beans, bush beans in there, for reasons we'll see in just a minute. And this is onions, lots of onions, so some people might be getting some onions from me. But they're doing really, really well. So there's purple, white, and yellow. This is purple pole beans. And carrots. They're very, very sporadically coming up in that row. And then yellow pole beans and green pole beans. Blue Lakes. There's cucumbers. They're just starting to bloom. They're actually just starting to take off. I got some cucamelons. We'll see how they do. I should have planted them against the pole, but we'll get them there. And tomatoes. These are all regular sized tomatoes. And I'm trying the weave this year, and I'm actually loving it. It's doing really, really well. It's time for her to do another layer, though, it looks like. I'm also doing a lot more hand pollination this year, and it's going awesome. A lot more is setting. Last year I had big issues, but this year they're getting hand pollination. And then this is my another pepper bed. I got some orange bell peppers, some banana-like peppers, some gypsy, some pimento, and then I'm going to have to look here. Shishoto pepper. I've got 3 of those plants, and they're actually loaded. It's pretty cool. And I've been noticing a lot of pepper blooms dying off, so I'm trying the tomato way of pollinating and see if that works for them. And this here is why I have to replant bush beans. I highly suspect that this soil is contaminated. I brought it in from somebody, and yeah, they came up fine, but they aren't doing so well. They're just kind of dying. And these I just sowed before it dawned on me what might be going on, so we'll see how they do. And the squash had trouble coming up too, so that might be why they had trouble coming up. But I pretty much, except for one hill where the zinnias are, that look very sad. They're rescue zinnias. But overall, I at least had one squash come up per hill, so that's good. Those first 3 are summer. One down at the end is summer, and then the rest are winter. And then the last 3 hills here are actually melons. I probably won't get anything from them. They're just starting to really maybe take off, and first freeze tends to come in late September, so we'll see. But all of these sad looking zinnias, we'll see what happens to them since they're all the rescues. And then my volunteer sunflower, or I guess also could be considered a black-eyed Susan, depending, I've heard. And I've got some herbs down here. Another one of my water dishes. And those irises were on the side of the road a few weeks ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, so we'll see how they do. But it's a pretty cheap way. Thank you to the person who set them out. And this here is my wildflower garden. And milkweed pods are super interesting on milkweed. Their seed pods are huge. This is the area I had my hornworm in. Not sure where it went, if a bird got it or whatnot, but there is the damaged wildflower that it ate on. I've got a few raspberries back there, first year for them, so they'll eventually take this over, but for now, got more herbs back there. And this is the balance. I'm going to wait until end of August to plant the rest of these. It's just too hot now. It's pretty consistently 90s now. And this is the bed I just let go to seed. I've got parsley and thyme. The rose is what my daughter got me for Mother's Day. The kale is seeding. The Swiss chard is seeding. Looks like the lettuce is starting to. I've got a black-eyed Susan back there. And carrots. And leeks. It's pretty cool. It's purple instead of white like the onions. And there's what carrot seeds look like before they're dried. The bugs love them, as well as the parsley. It's my strawberry bed. Some of these are going to be transplanted next to the asparagus back in the back corner. And there's another agasachi. This one's a licorice smell. Some more flowers, a delphinium. This bed I put in last year. This is the second year for it, and most of this, except for where the flowers are and the main garden area, is the second year. Back along the fence is the second year. I moved in here 2.5 years ago, and this whole thing was actually unfenced without the shed and was all grass. So it's been a journey. This was already here. They didn't get pruned this year, and you can tell it. And this is my sunflower bed, or sunflower area, black-eyed Susan area. There was about 10 plants here last year, and it has very well come back with vengeance. And then there's wildflowers across the street, and so they're starting to make their way over here as well. And the finches love these flowers as well. So that about does my yard. And the last part I have to do to get where everything's done is this one area along this fence in that corner. And once that's done, it's more on to maintenance and maybe seeing what I can do in the middle of the lawn. We'll see. That's it. Have a good one.